The story of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ appears in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each tells the same story with a slightly different perspective, and it is Luke, the physician, that seems to give us a clinical view of events documenting details of Jesus' words on the cross. Let's examine Luke's account beginning in chapter 23 of Luke. And so Luke 23, 28 through 31 is where I want to start. And so let me find myself here. All right. But Jesus, turning to them, said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming in which they will say, 'Blessed are the barren wombs that never bore and breasts which never nursed.' Then they will begin to say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if they do these things in the greenwood, then what will be done in the dry?" Now, what are we talking about here? So let's take a look and see. First of all, this is in the middle of the story of the crucifixion. He's faced, judgment. They've chosen Barabbas. He's stood before Pilate, all of that. And in the verses just leading up to that, there's flocks of people following him. Simon is carried to, taken up the cross, and all of these different things have gone on. And it's all of these people following him, and that's when he says, "Daughters, don't weep for me." In the middle of the crucifixion process, Jesus is looking at another time as well, and he tells them kind of what lies ahead. And what lies ahead, and what he's describing to them, is what I would call perilous times. And we did a whole series right around the time of COVID. For the Sunday school class that we were teaching, we did an entire, I don't remember how many lessons it was. It seemed like it was over 30, talking about, the end time stresses and pressures and all of those things, and how to deal with them, and signs of the times, and all those different things that really are, the world we live in today. And so, it says that, in that process, that perilous times and times are coming, and he tells them, "Don't weep for me, but understand that things are coming when people are going to say it's better you don't have children, or it's better that you're not raising children at this time," and because of the times that you're talking about living in. And it even goes on to say that, they will be so fearful and so anxiety driven that they'll just say, "Let the mountains fall on us and cover us over so we don't have to face and deal with any of this stuff." And then he puts the onus or the pressure of this situation on those that is sort of in authority, if you will, at the time, or those that are not living for Christ, I guess I could say that, because it says if they would do this in the greenwood times, how much more in the drywood times? So if they do this when there's not all this, stresses and end time type of things, and all of the events surrounding that, if they would do it when it's supposedly good and fresh and new and all, then how are they going to be when it's older and there's more things that have gone on? Perilous times. That's what he's addressing. Is there's perilous times coming. So don't stress over me. There's perilous times coming that you may have to live through. And tied to that is this fear. And when I taught the series before, I think I referenced it at a couple different points. The old song "Jesus is Coming Soon" goes back to probably 70s. When it says perilous times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedoms we all hold dear now at stake. And it talks about the troublesome times and the fact that there is hope and that Jesus is coming soon. And our society today is so fear-driven we don't like to say fear. People don't say, "Oh, I'm fearful." They say, "I have anxiety." I don't know what makes it better or worse or different. That's the common phrase. I'm having an anxiety attack instead of saying I'm really afraid or fearful or whatever. I have anxiety. I don't know that it makes it any different. It's still a very real thing that grips your heart, grips your mind, and you have fear. And yet over and over and over and over and over the Bible, it tells you, fear not. Jesus says, fear not. God sends an angel, fear not. Don't be afraid. And the reality is that even in the crucifixion, even in the dealing with the cross, that Jesus was looking at more than just the present time. He was looking ahead to the future and dealing with these people who were following along, saying, hey, don't let this stress you out, because there's worse times coming. But he doesn't really want you to stress about those things either, right? And that's kind of the process that we're going through here. One of the things that ties very closely to what we're discussing in this series, Mercy Management, is that if I'm trying to hang on to the scorecard of who owes who and what's what and all of those things, if I'm worried about, people have wronged me or done something that's not right to me or whatever, if I'm trying to score keep and a record keep or whatever you want to call it, I think one book talks about debt collecting. If I'm trying to hang on to all of this stuff, I open myself up to have anxiety and have fear and all of those things. And part of it, I honestly believe, part of it comes from the fact that the Bible tells us that if we don't forgive, we won't be forgiven. And I think in our subconscious or in our spirit, we know that if I'm doing all the scorekeeping and stuff, there's some scorekeeping and stuff coming my way that I'm probably not going to do very well in. We are so much freer when we can let things go and give them to God. So now let's continue on in what's going on in the crucifixion here in Luke. So I'm going to look at now verse 33, and it says, and when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Okay, so he's speaking to the crowd about things in the future. Now they bring him to Calvary where they're going to crucify him. He's got one thief on the left, one thief on the right. You know the story. I'm going to skip down just a little bit further to verse 39. And it says, then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, if you are the Christ, save yourself and us. Now, I haven't finished reading there, but save yourself and us. In other words, they've mocked him at this point in the interim. What I skipped, they've mocked him. They've written, and put a sign above him that says "King of the Jews," etc. And we could do a whole lesson on just that signage, "King of the Jews." But anyway, so the one says, "If you're the Christ, save us." And it says, "But the other answering rebuked him, saying, do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." So in the present time, Jesus is dealing with those that are around him, and those that are willing to have a proper relationship and have salvation, and so he's aware of the present. So looking forward to the future, aware of the present, and these are criminals that are around him. He is being hung there, an innocent man with criminals around him, and the one is making fun, and the other is recognizing, "Lord, remember me, save me, if you will, when you come to your kingdom." Now, he didn't have all the words right for, what we would say, oh, this is the sinner's prayer, or this is how it needs to be done. But he had his heart right. And that's something we need to understand. Too many times we can be, shall I say, harsh with people about, well, you got to do it exactly this way and you have to do exactly that. God looks on hearts. He doesn't look at, how well you speak. Moses had some type of speech issue or something he didn't feel comfortable with, and he spoke that out, and God dealt with it. God uses imperfect people all the time, but he looks for hearts. He looks for heart attitudes. So the criminal on the cross here says, Lord, remember me, and he says, you'll be with me in paradise. Think about what's going on though. Jesus is not only facing the death through crucifixion, which is horrible and painful and just awful, hideous way to die. He's not only facing that in the natural, but he's taking on the sins of the world for all time, for all people, as part of the mission, if you will, from his Father, from God has laid out this path for him, and yet he's never too busy for that one person to be able to say, yes, you'll be with me in paradise, and recognize that right heart attitude. Never too busy. And we need to understand that God is never too busy for us. God is never too busy to hear our prayer. He's never too busy to address a right heart. Okay? So, it doesn't matter if you're a criminal. Doesn't matter if you think God is busy. He's never too busy, because salvation is what it's all about. And it's important because people outside the church, people inside the church don't always get it right in their thinking. People outside the church can really get confused about some of this stuff. The bottom line is that God wants to restore a right relationship to us. God set up the rules, no doubt about that. But the rules that were set up is that you have to, that sin has to be atoned for by the shedding of blood and by death. And so the reality is that this process is the reason Jesus came, is to put an opportunity or a way for man to be in right relationship with God, because it's already been established at this point that man, left to his own devices and on his own, is not capable of living a sinless life, no sin at all. And if anyone thinks that they can, they're already sinning in the first area, and that they have pride, because it's not true. They're a little bit delusional. So salvation is what it's all about. That's what Jesus came for, was salvation. And as we have talked about a number of times in this series, he had the power, he had the authority, had the ability to punish for sin, but he showed mercy God showed mercy through Jesus Christ, showed mercy so that we could have a path to right relationship with God. Okay? Now, the mission, let's look at that. We're going to go back to verse 34. I skipped over it before. We're going to go back to verse 34. And it says, then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And they delivered his garments and cast lots. And so it's really the A part of that, if you will. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. This is critical. So I have a couple of questions for you. First one is, who is them? Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Well, them, would that be the crowds that said, give us Barabbas? And when asked, what do you want to do with Jesus? They said, crucify. So would it be those that took him and gave him over to be crucified? Is that who needs to be forgiven? Yes, that's who needs to be forgiven. Why? Because they did not, some of them just did not want to hear the words that he had spoken, because as I talked about a couple of weeks ago, they didn't want to address the fact that they had sin and things going on in their life. They didn't want to address their wrong hearts and wrong attitudes and wrong actions. His words made them feel like, they were being hated on because they were contrary to just do whatever you feel like, it's all wonderful. They weren't measuring up to the standards of the Ten Commandments, and So they were angry when it was brought to their attention that they were not. So that's them. Is it Pilate and the different rulers that were involved in this process? Yes, they are them also. They passed judgment. The one group said, let his blood be on our hands. Wow. Wow. I mean, is that tone deaf and not understanding what's going on at all? Yes, that's what that is. But he's saying, Father, forgive them too. And then because he was not just looking at the present, the ones right around him, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Even the criminal doesn't know what he's doing. Even Judas, who had turned him over to the authorities and betrayed him. Even Judas knew what he'd done was wrong and was regretful and all that. He just couldn't see a path to that forgiveness side of things. But the fact of the matter is they're part of them too. Father, forgive them. And then Jesus is looking down through time because he's taking on the sins of the world for all mankind for all time. He's looking down through the times and seeing you and I. And do we need to be forgiven? Absolutely. And so, Father, forgive them, looking forward to us. Father, forgive them. I don't know what they do. In other words, it's not just the things that they might know that they've done wrong. It's the things that they don't even get it. They don't even understand what all they've done wrong. Okay? So, the fact of the matter is when he says, Father, forgive them, we as them. We are part of the them that he's saying, Father, forgive them. For they know not what they do. And this goes to ignorance of the law. So there's the law, the 10 Commandments. There's ignorance of that or inability to adhere to that. That exists out there for sure. Then there's things that we don't even know when we do. We may misspeak, or we may do something that is hurtful to someone, maybe don't even realize it. We may our actions at some point in time may be a violation of putting other gods before God, or they may be whatever they might be. We may not even be aware of that in our own life. And I don't mean that we don't have just general awareness, but we may not be cognizant of exactly the damage that something we have done is, or we may not be in a place where our eyes have been opened, if you will, to what that action actually is. We may think it's one thing, and later in life we may learn, wow, I really was a jerk at that time, or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, in our society here in America, we say ignorance of the law is no excuse. What Jesus says is, Father, forgive them anyway, because they don't even know. They're ignorant sometimes of the law. They're ignorant of what they're doing sometimes. So, Father, forgive them anyway. So he's offering forgiveness across the board, and we as them, all right? So that's important for us to understand. And then I want to kind of go into a wrap-up mode with this and look at a couple of things. First of all, we need to recognize or have recognition of the problem. And the problem is our hearts, our attitudes, and our actions do not line up with God's word, and we fall short and we fail. That's why the Bible says all have fallen short of the glory of God, and we're all sinners. Those that irritate me are sinners. I'm a sinner. Their actions might be wrong, but my actions might be wrong as well. All have sinned. We need to recognize that the problem is hearts that are not in line, not in tune with God. And we have moments, we may have moments when, at 8:30 p.m. Saturday night, I nailed it. My heart was right, my attitude was right, whatever. But the problem is, 6:30 a.m., on Monday morning, I might be way off base and maybe saying things I shouldn't, or having, hatred in my heart, or whatever it might be. That's not proper and right. We all have sinned. We all are part of the problem. And so the second thing is we have to recognize the answer. And the answer is Jesus Christ and the salvation that he offers us. That is the answer. And lining up with Christ, that is the answer. Getting our heart in tune with Christ, that is the answer. Getting our self out of the way and making him Lord of our life and putting him in control instead of us, and then truly learning to trust him. And this is the challenge for us as Christians, is that it's one thing for me to say, I have faith, I put my trust in God, I want to be Christ-like in all that I do, etc. But when I actually have to walk that out every day, it's real easy to try and take control of everything again and be a micromanager. It's real easy for me to be fearful or have anxiety instead of trusting in God. It's real easy for me to not forgive somebody for one thing while trying to say, well, God's forgiven me. And then the guilt from my, hypocrisy kind of comes up and bites me. And then I feel bad, and I lose my victory, and I'm walking around, as I've said many times before, feeling like 100 pounds of sin on a stick. Christ is the answer. He paid the debt. Anytime I'm out of line, I need to go to him in prayer and say, God, please help me get back in line. Please forgive me. Lord, help me to walk in the right place with you, in the right path with you. And it's just that simple. You don't have to wait till Sunday so you can go to the altar, or you don't have to, go to your prayer closet and kneel down or anything else. You can literally be driving 70 miles an hour down the road and say, God, forgive me for my attitude that was wrong there. And if I need to make amends with somebody, I can do that too. And if I have attitudes about the actions that have, someone's taken against me, or something that's happened, or whatever, even if I'm mad at God, and I can say, God, I forgive this person, or God, I forgive you because I'm mad about this situation, and help me to understand, your way and trust in you more. We can have honest dialogue with God. We don't have to go to college and learn some, special way to say words in order to pray and get God's attention. We just have to have a heart turned towards God and pray honestly before him. There's no point in saying, God, I trust you and everything's great, if I'm sitting around wrapped, in a blanket of fear and anxiety and worry and all that stuff. No, I can say, God, help me to have your peace. Show me your plan. God, give me the assurance. Or we can be honest with God. And like I said, you can even say, God, I'm asking you for forgiveness for my attitude, and I'm trying to forgive you because I've been angry towards you, or whatever. You can be honest with God. When you're honest with God, that your heart is in a right place. Now, the other thing is, so we have recognition of the problem, recognition of the answer, and then realization of the future. The fact of the matter is that things change over time. There's going to be opportunities for you to take offense. There's going to be things for you to worry about in man's natural way of thinking. There's going to be problems that arise. There's going to be things that break. There's going to be money things that don't work. There's going to be jobs that are stressful. There's going to be health issues. All these things are going to happen. It's part of life here on earth, and it is no respecter of persons. However, how I deal with those things is tied greatly to exactly the stuff that I'm talking about in this series. And do not for a second discount how important my ability to show mercy and forgiveness is to all of this. Because when I reach a place where I can show mercy and forgiveness towards those that may have wronged or hurt me, I open myself up to a greater understanding of how God has shown mercy and forgiveness to me, and it changes my relationship, and it allows me to walk closer to God, to hear his voice more clearly. That other stuff clouds my ability to hear, clouds my ability to see, clouds my ability to understand. When I am able to forgive and walk in the example that Christ gave, when I'm willing to show love and mercy, it opens up the ability for me to hear from God and have a better relationship with God. And to be honest with you, that's what I really want to see happen as we go through these series, is for all of us, me included, to be able to get closer to God, to be more Christ-like in how we live our daily life, to have freedom from fear and anxiety and worries, to be able to have peace, to be able to know that when we pray to God that he hears us, that he cares about us, and feel that love and compassion and peace. The peace of God is so powerful. We may have to do a series on that here before too long, but the fact of the matter is all of that ties together, and as soon as I can get all of the grudge stuff, all of the unforgiveness stuff, all of these things out of the way, and trust God and show mercy and show forgiveness and show love, when I can walk in that path, and the more I walk in that path, the more free I become in my relationship with Christ. And that's really, truly what I'm trying to see happen, and what I'm hoping for in our lives, that we're able to get closer to God, that we're able to see those things. So recognize the problem, recognize the answer, Jesus Christ, and realize that the future is not going to be, all sweet things and roses. That's not any place does it say that. And so walking with Christ, we can have peace and great rewards in many different ways. One of those ways is having peace in the midst of the storm. But the fact of the matter is we don't get a bed of roses. What we get is the ability to walk with the Rose of Sharon, the Prince of Peace, the one who will never fail, never leave us, and walk right there with us. But it's time to put down the scorecard, quit keeping score, show mercy as you've been shown mercy, show forgiveness as you've been shown forgiveness, show love as you've been shown love, and let go of all this nonsense and quit dragging it around. And let's walk free in God together. And that's it for this week.